Aloha, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to the Radiate Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm Christine D. Ross, and today's episode comes from a place very close to my heart, both metaphorically and physically. So, as some of you may know, 5 years ago, this October, I began my journey with breast cancer. And on November 18th, I'll be celebrating 5 years cancer-free. So, with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as well as my own anniversary of healing, it feels like the perfect time to honor this chapter of my life by sharing my story. So, my hope is that by opening up about the struggles I've faced and the tools I've used, it will raise awareness, offer strength to those going through something similar, and remind you that you're not in this alone. So, whether you've been diagnosed cancer as part of your journey or you know someone facing it, my intention is to provide some peace and clarity as I share the signs and symptoms I experienced, the choices I was given, the studies I found, and the decisions I made along the way. So, if you have ever had a moment in your life where everything changes in an instant, you know what I mean. 1 minute I felt just invincible, and the next, my world just turned upside down. Life became this roller coaster of unexpected twists, and there were some moments that tore me up inside in more ways than I could have ever imagined. But through it all, something just incredible happened. That journey, as painful as it was, ignited a transformation in me, one that completely changed how I approach life, my health, and every challenge I face. So, over the next few episodes, I'm going to share that journey with you. So, today I'll start with my diagnosis story. Then I'll dive into the research I've done, the natural preventative options I explored, and finally, I'll open up about how I've healed and the situations I have faced over the last 5 years. So it hasn't been easy, but the lessons I've learned and the balance I found have been life-changing. So now I want to be just really clear about my intention. I'm not sharing this because I want you to give me a pity party or see me as a victim. That's not who I am. I want to be an example of how you can take back your power, even when life throws something overwhelming your way. Every experience, no matter how hard, has shaped me into the person I am today. Just stronger, more connected with what truly matters. This is a story about survival, yes, but more than that, it's about resilience, about stepping into your power, your strength, and trusting yourself to rise above whatever life throws at you. It's like the acronym of FEAR: face everything and rise. I'm here to share what I've learned and hope that it helps you do just that as you navigate your own path. So, my story, it all started about 7 years ago. I was young, vibrant, and full of life, believing I had everything under control. Then one day, I found a small lump in my breast. I dismissed it almost immediately. How could it be something serious? I didn't feel like there was a reason to worry. This wasn't my first experience with a lump. When I was 17 years old, I had one removed, and it turned out to be benign, nothing. So I told myself the same thing this time. I know my body, and I would know if this little lump was something to be concerned about. But as the time passed, my intuition whispered otherwise. 2 years went by, and the lump persisted. It grew. And deep down, I knew something wasn't right. So on September 17th, I met with my gynecologist. I told him I just wanted the lump removed, that it had grown, and I joked with him about not wanting it to turn into a third boob. But he didn't laugh. Instead, he eagerly urged me to get my first mammogram as soon as I could to find out exactly what was going on. I wasn't looking forward to having a mammogram, which is another reason I waited so long to get my lump checked. I had convinced myself that if I felt fine and didn't sense anything was wrong, why should I expose myself to radiation and endure the discomfort of having my breast squished? I came up with just excuse after excuse to avoid my first mammogram. But deep down, I knew that it was the first step I had to take before I could address the lump. So on September 26th, I went in for that dreaded mammogram. The room was cold, and they gave me, one of those flimsy paper towel, just a mockery of a dress or a vest for modesty, which ironically made me feel even more exposed. So the machine was just as tight and uncomfortable as I had imagined, squeezing my body into awkward positions like I was a clay figure, just manipulated to fit into just the right angles for the scan. At one point, I felt like a human puppet as the technician grabbed my breast, placed it on the tray, slid my hips to one side, and instructed me to push my chest forward, stick my butt out, and hold still and hold my breath while the machine clamped down. So I was just relieved when the mammogram was over. And then I was sent to another room for the ultrasound. So compared to the mammogram, I expected this to be a breeze. So the ultrasound technician seemed to focus more on my left side, which made sense because that's where the lump was. But then she started scanning my left armpit and didn't do the right, which struck me as odd. So I asked her, "Don't you need to check my right armpit too?" She replied that the mammogram technician had noticed a large lymph node on the left side, and they wanted more imaging of it. So after the ultrasound, I thought I was done. But after a little while of waiting in a cold room with just that little paper towel mock shirt thing around me, the nurse returned and informed me that they needed more images. So back to round 2 of the titty smasher. And it was during this second round that a sense of dread started creeping in. Maybe this wasn't just a simple cyst. One of those painful squeezes, both the technician and I noticed a greenish color discharge from my nipple. I remember my heart just sinking. Suddenly, this wasn't just another routine mammogram. Something was wrong. And the fear that had been lingering in the back of my mind just became all too real. So after more back and forth between the mammogram and the ultrasound rooms, the coldness of the room seemed to settle deeper into my bones. And I remained in that flimsy paper towel vest, just feeling bare and exposed and vulnerable, just both physically and emotionally. That was the moment I realized I was no longer just a patient going through routine exams. Something was unfolding, something bigger than I had prepared for. And I was left waiting for the answers that would change everything. So I wasn't surprised when the call came the next day that had found a tumor and abnormal lymph nodes. So then I was urgently scheduled to fly to Oahu for a biopsy. So this was another moment I realized my life was about to change. Now, the doctors and insurance wouldn't have rushed me to another island and pay for the flights if the lump was nothing. So these moments, just fear and panic just consumed me. My mind raced with all of the what ifs. So on October 2nd, I got done with my work early, and my daughter dropped me off at the Hilo airport. I felt like I was walking into a nightmare. As I boarded the plane to Oahu, I did my best to just hold myself together. When I arrived at the hospital, it was another cold, sterile room. I was draped in yet another flimsy paper towel, lying on an exam table as just two male doctors examined my bare breast. Now, I just want to just put it out there, remind you that I have been very modest about my breasts. So just being exposed like this was just such a discomfort for me. That was the first time I felt physical pain in this experience. So the cancer hadn't brought me any pain before, but the pain came from the biopsy. The needles that pierced my skin again and again and again, just searching for the right spot to collect the samples. I don't know why it took them so long. I mean, they had the image right there, but it just seemed like they just had to poke me over and over again, finding the right spot, and then more to collect several samples from both the lump as well as the lymph node. The pain was just sharp, but I think even worse was the emotional sting of realizing I was no longer invincible. My body had betrayed me. So just after the biopsy, I found a quiet spot outside the hospital and let a few tears escape. I felt so utterly alone. So I called a cab to take me back to the airport, and just somehow in my emotional mess made the right mechanics to somehow get me home. But flying back to Kona that evening, just the weight of my reality was sinking in. When Travis picked me up from the airport, I just let go. I just remember just collapsing into his arms, finally allowing myself to just feel and process everything that had been holding them back. Yet still, I just didn't know what my future was. So I'll never forget the next day, October 3rd, 2019. That day is really just imprinted on my soul. I was standing on just a beautiful Waikoloa, pristine white sand beach, just feeling the cool breeze on my skin and listening to the waves, just trying to allow some of this emotion to release from me. That's when I got that phone call. As my doctor, his words came fast and heavy. And really, honestly, I can't remember what else he said. But just hearing those words, "You have cancer," I was in disbelief. And I even had asked him to repeat what he said. "You have cancer." Those three words just shattered my world. I was 43. I did yoga. I ran. I ate well, or at least I thought I did. I was healthy. It didn't make sense. My whole life, I had believed I was doing everything right. But in that moment, my just nightmares I've been having for the last month became a reality. That moment marked the onset of my storm, a sudden disruption filled with just challenge I never could have possibly imagined. Cancer thrust me into the heart of my vulnerability, shattering the illusion that I was indestructible. Yet, in the midst of this turmoil, something profound began to take shape within me. It sparked a transformation that would forever alter my approach to life, health, and the challenges that lie ahead. So, while the diagnosis itself was a shock, one of the hardest parts came afterward. Finding the courage to share the news with my loved ones. Now, this is something I do not wish that anybody has to do. I vividly just recall witnessing the tears swelling up in their eyes as I spoke the words I hadn't even come to terms with myself. I didn't have any of the answers. I didn't know how big the monster was inside me. I didn't even know what my future looked like, and wondered how much future did I even have? That uncertainty was just suffocating. So I chose to tell only a select few people because, well, it was hard to bear the news and to share it. And I was fearful of being treated as fragile and broken and as a victim. And even more afraid of the avalanche of unsolicited advice that would sure follow. People, bless their hearts, offered everything from miracle cure suggestions to wild theories about how wearing a bra every day could cause the cancer. So in those moments, I realized how overwhelming it could be to sift through well-meaning but unhelpful advice, especially when I was already grappling with so many decisions and much uncertainty. So, living in uncertainty, the most difficult part of my cancer journey was learning to live in that state of uncertainty. There were so many questions that were unanswered, just swirling in my mind. How would this change my life? What limitations would I have? Would I ever be the same again? What was my body going to be like afterward? And despite having a small support team, Travis was my unwavering companion through just every twist and turn. No matter what decisions I made or how uncertain I felt, he stood by my side, offering love and support that really anchored me. His presence was my strength during just those darkest days. And I couldn't have asked for a better partner to navigate the storm with. However, even with his amazing support, I often felt just alone and isolated. The journey to heal and make sense of what was happening within me sometimes felt like just a solitary path. While my loved ones were there to provide comfort, much of the emotional and spiritual work was mine alone to confront. It was a profound journey of introspection where it was just me, my thoughts, and also the vast expanse of the internet. I found myself diving deep into countless rabbit holes, seeking out one answer after another, finding answers that resonated with my intuition. At times, the sheer volume of conflicting information was very overwhelming, leaving me questioning what was truly right for me. Yet through it all, I learned to trust myself and trust my instincts. I discovered that the answers I sought were not always in the loudest voices or the most popular opinions, but often in the quiet whispers of my own heart. In choosing to listen to myself and feel what my body wanted, I gained the clarity and the strength I needed to move forward on my healing journey, even when the path felt lonely. So, okay, back to the timeline. After receiving that just terrifying phone call on the beach, confirming my worst fear, the next week became just a whirlwind of appointments and doctor's consultations, phone appointments, meeting in person, and arranging more travel to and from Oahu. I was scared out of my mind. So in that time, I just remember running became my escape, my release. Every time I laced up my shoes and hit the pavement with my dog Bodhi by my side, I felt like I was just running away from the fear, the unknown, with a fight song playing through my headphones. Each step was an attempt to ground my emotions, just pounding them into the earth. So on October 11th, Travis and I flew to Oahu for what they called a cancer fair. The name almost sounded cheerful, but I assure you it was anything but. It was during this visit that the reality of my situation hit me in another way. I was too young for this. Now, nurses, friends, and doctors had told me that before, but walking into that room, it became painfully clear. I was surrounded by white-haired people who looked like they could have been my parents or even my grandparents. So we were all greeted by specialists who gave us the basics of living with cancer, which was a phrase that just still felt surreal. Then Travis and I were shown into a small cold exam room where again I was given, the nice little paper towel uniform to wear for the rest of the day there. So this is where the real discomfort began again. One by one, doctors came in, general surgeons, plastic surgeons, their assistants, genetic counselors. Each visit brought another layer of vulnerability. Sitting there, clothed only in that ridiculous paper towel gown, I felt exposed in every sense of the word. Every probing hand and scrutinizing gaze at my breast was a stark reminder of my reality and vulnerability. Each surgeon had their own recommendation: lumpectomy, mastectomy, nipple-sparing surgery, restrictive options, using skin from other parts of my body to create new nipples, or even tattooed nipples. It was overwhelming. The choices felt endless, yet none of them felt right. So I was given primarily two choices: lumpectomy surgery with radiation and chemo medication, or a full mastectomy followed by medication. So neither option sat well with me. This was my body, my health, and my future. I wasn't going to rush into anything. So I went home and sat with the decisions, took my time to research, asked the questions I could think of, and consulted with different doctors. I needed to make an informed decision, not just based on what was medically recommended, but on what felt right for me. And I had to be sure. I researched all of the options: traditional treatments like surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy pills, as well as holistic alternatives. I prayed. I meditated. I spent just countless hours on Google searching for anything I could find. I asked doctors their opinions, gathered insights from others who had walked this path, and then I turned inward. In the end, my final decision came not from what others told me to do, but from how I felt deep inside. Every time I thought about mastectomy or radiation, I felt resistance. And not just a little hesitation, this was a full body, deep in my heart, loud and clear no. My entire body just felt resistant to those options. And I knew I couldn't ignore that. So I made what I call option 3. I chose to have the nipple sparing lumpectomy surgery, but no radiation, no pills, but to prevent cancer holistically afterward. Even despite what the doctor's opinions were about that, and my lack of knowledge about alternative therapies, and the lack of holistic options presented to me, it wasn't an easy choice by any means, but it felt aligned with my heart, my spirit, and my body. There was one pivotal moment that really cemented my decision. I was meditating and I just placed my hand over my heart, right where the cancerous lump was. And in that moment, I did something I hadn't done before. I gave this area love. And when I did this, something just remarkable happened. The cancer went from feeling like a terrible monster inside of me to something that was providing purpose greater than I could possibly comprehend at the time. I was suddenly grateful for the cancer and looked forward to knowing the grand purpose that it had for me in life. In that moment of peace, I heard a voice say, "Christine, you've got this." That was when my decision became clear. I chose not out of fear, but out of inspiration. I decided to face everything and rise, to walk this path in a way that felt right for me, no matter how unconventional it might seem to others. And from that point forward, I chose faith over fear. I made decisions based on what felt aligned with my heart, spirit, and body. And it wasn't easy, but it was mine. Okay, so just back to the story. On October 20th, I flew back over to Oahu for an MRI. And this is just another uniquely vulnerable experience. Breast MRIs, I hope you never have to have one. They are definitely different than your typical MRI. So I just laid face down on a table with my arms just painfully stretched above my head. Just after laying there for what seemed forever, just pins and needles just painfully put my arms to sleep while my breast just hung there in the cool air. It was just miserable. The noise of the machine or the claustrophobia wasn't the issue. It was the discomfort in staying still, my arms in pain and feeling just exposed to the world. When the pain became too much to bear, I pushed that call button. And they asked if I could manage just another 10 to 15 minutes because they were almost done. And if we stopped now, then they would have to do what they had been doing for like the last 30 minutes. So I told myself I could do it. I counted in sets of 10, knowing if I could endure just 10 seconds, I could handle another 10 and then another. I could do anything for 10 seconds at a time. So instead of succumbing to fear and the negative stories swirling in my mind, I embraced the vulnerability. It became a source of strength rather than a reason to retreat. Being naked, both physically and metaphorically, stripped away my self-doubt. So November 18th, the day of my surgery, was a day I actually looked forward to. It was the day the lump would be removed, examined for what it was, and my new future would begin to take shape. So I've been waiting for this moment since the beginning, for my cancer to be fully staged and diagnosed and hopefully have some answers of what my future was going to be like. So with Travis by my side, we boarded that plane and flew to Oahu again. I really just could not wait to be put to sleep and finally get some rest while that cancer was removed from my body. So when I woke up, Travis told me the surgery had gone smoothly. The cancer surrounding the tissue and the lymph node had all been removed. But after the surgery, a new challenge emerged, one I wasn't prepared for. My doctor handed me a prescription for Oxycontin. As you know, it's a powerful painkiller. But to me, it wasn't just a pill. It was the drug I was certain my brother had been addicted to, and part of the cocktail that ended his life. So the idea of taking it made me feel sick. The same medication that had stolen my brother from me was now being offered to me as relief. I just couldn't bring myself to take it. Even though I voiced my resistance, the hospital insisted, and Travis had to pick it up before we could leave. I remember him holding that bottle, and it felt heavier than it should. Inside were pills that could erase my pain, but I couldn't bring myself to take even one. My body hurt, but my heart hurt more. The fear of what that drug represented was worse than the physical pain. The trip home was a blur. I was just so tired and groggy from the surgery that I actually laid down in the middle of the TSA line at the airport and just took a little nap. Now, I remember people being concerned, but at the time, it seemed like a very perfectly reasonable thing to do. Somehow, Travis managed to scrape me up off the floor, led me through the airport, onto the plane, and sat me in my seat and buckled me for a safe journey home. So during my recovery, I chose to face the pain head on rather than numb it with the Oxycontin. Shortly after my diagnosis, I consulted with a cannabis doctor who guided me on using marijuana to manage both the cancer and the pain. So I opted for THC tinctures, hoping for a more natural form of relief. While it did dull the edge of the pain, it did not come close to the powerful effects Oxycontin could have provided. The pain was intense, just relentless, and at times unbearable. But I chose to sit with it and breathe through each wave of the pain, just determined to stay true to my decision. There were moments I second guessed my decision, times when the pain brought me to tears, and I wondered if I was just being too stubborn. But this wasn't just about resisting a drug. It was about resisting the fear and darkness that that drug represented. I wanted to honor my brother's memory, to say no to what had stolen him away from me. I knew that this journey wasn't just about physical pain. It was about allowing myself to feel everything. Because in feeling the pain, I found healing. Leaning into the pain, both physical and emotional, was how I would find my way through it. So on December 6th, I had my follow-up appointment with the surgeon. At last, I would learn the full extent of the cancer. Was it in my lymph nodes? Had it spread? What was next? So I was in shock when the doctor announced I was cancer-free. Just as the devastating call on October 3rd revealing my cancer diagnosis didn't seem real, this news didn't either. I guess it takes time for things like this to sink in for me. But through the tears and discomfort of my cancer experience, I came to understand that this journey wasn't just about conquering cancer or enduring physical pain. It was about honoring my own strength and resilience. It was about letting go of what was deserving to me. And each choice I made, no matter how difficult was a step toward reclaiming control over my life. What became clear to me was that in the process of healing, the most important thing was learning to tune into myself. I had to silence the noise around me and listen to my inner voice, the one that held the answers unique to my body, my mind, and my spirit. Now, it wasn't always easy, especially when I was overwhelmed by conflicting advice. But I knew that the path to true healing wasn't outside of me, it was within. So I underwent a few more surgeries and faced my fears head on, allowing each hard moment to mold me into a stronger version of myself. This journey taught me that doing hard things builds resilience. The discomfort and exposure didn't break me. And vulnerability, I discovered, wasn't a weakness. It was a profound source of empowerment. In the depths of that vulnerability, I found the power to heal not just my body, but my heart and spirit as well. And I hope that sharing my story inspires you to embrace your own journey, to trust your inner wisdom, and to remember that healing takes many forms. Sometimes it's in the choices we make, and sometimes it's in allowing ourselves to fully feel the pain, learn from it, love it, and appreciate it so it can eventually transform into something else entirely. So if you haven't yet experienced the life-altering wake-up call of a serious diagnosis, I urge you to take the proactive steps for your health now. Educate yourself about preventative care and prioritize those screenings that could make all the difference. So whether it's getting your mammogram at the recommended age or staying on top of any other essential health checks, these actions can mean the difference between catching something early or facing an overwhelming challenge down the road. I was blessed to find my cancer in its early stages, but I can't help but wonder, what if I had gotten my mammogram at age 40, like most of us are advised to do? What if I had the lump removed right when I first found it, instead of waiting until I felt something was wrong? Could I have avoided this entire ordeal? Was it even cancer back then, or was it something that could have been handled more easily? I've learned from this experience. Move forward and know there's no sense in lingering on these questions. Instead, I focus on the fact that I caught my cancer early and took action when it mattered. If my experience can serve as a reminder, it's this: don't delay. Stay ahead of the game. Take charge of your health and don't wait until you feel something is wrong to act. You may never know how much trouble you're preventing by being proactive. And if you are going through something similar, I am sorry. My message to you is this: take the time you need to sit with your fears, to research your choices, and to make a decision that feels right for you. These choices are yours to make, no one else's. Not even your doctors can tell you what you should do. Only you can truly know what's best for you, your body, and your life. I also encourage you to listen to your body. Learn to tune into what it's telling you. And if you're open to it, explore muscle testing or meditation so you can easily feel what resonates with your body. And above all, love yourself. Love all of you, even the parts that are labeled as bad or diseased. Love it all, because that will carry you through whatever you face. It will give you strength, clarity, and peace. So one powerful tool that has been instrumental in my personal path to healing is the Hawaiian practice of Ho'oponopono, which focuses on healing what is cordant in you, reconciliation and forgiveness, and letting go. So I've shared more about this in my past couple podcast episodes. And I encourage you to join me in taking the 21-day Ho'oponopono challenge. It's an invitation to create profound healing in your life, one step at a time. By dedicating yourself to this practice, you can find healing, release old wounds, and find peace, no matter what you're facing. So as I shared earlier, as Breast Cancer Awareness Month unfolds, I'll be dedicating the next few episodes to sharing more about my journey, from the diagnosis to the research, and ultimately to how I've healed over the past 5 years. Together, we'll navigate the challenges I faced, the lessons learned, and how I created a new balance in my life. If you don't know where to start or deserve assistance on your health and wellness journey, I would be honored to be your coach. Please feel free to reach out to me at radiate.hw@gmail.com or on my website, radiatehealthandwellness.com, where you can also learn more about how I can support you. Also, I invite you to explore my books, Discover the Adventure of You, where you can discover your values, beliefs, your authentic self, and find insights into some of my many healing tools. And my book, Health Beams, which serves as your guide to preventing disease and creating just that long, healthy health span. So if you've been inspired by this podcast and know someone who could benefit from its message, please share it. You never know whose life you might change. Together, let's create a ripple effect of health and wellness throughout the world. So mahalo for tuning in to the Radiate Health and Wellness podcast. Please follow and subscribe to hear more empowering stories and practical tips for living your healthiest, happiest life. Until next time, remember that whatever path you choose, you do not have to go through it alone. Your choices are yours to make. And above all, know that you are stronger than you think. Trust yourself, listen to your body, and radiate health and wellness in all that you do.